I'm so happy today to have Clackamas County Commissioner Chair Tootie Smith here. Thank you so much for coming.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah. You're kind of like a household name, so it's
Oh,
just kind of an honor to have you here. Like, I've worked in the news up here for like over 10 years. I used to, and I remember just hearing about you all the time, and it's just great to have
well,
you.
thanks for having me. I don't consider myself a household name, but if you
Yeah.
say so, then so be it, I
Okay.
guess.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and I did want to mention you're the second Clackamas County person. I had Ben West on here months ago, and I'm going to do a future episode with him after the election, but I just think what you guys are doing in Clackamas County is great. Um, and yeah, tell me about this break down this election in Clackamas because I don't know as much about it as Multnomah and just the importance of it and all that stuff. And
Well, Clackamas County's governance model is very different than Multnomah County. Clackamas County is a statutory county. All five commissioners are elected county-wide. We don't have districts. We don't represent a certain area.
I see.
So that really makes us accountable countywide. It's very difficult. We have about 1.2 million acres in 16 cities,
Mhm.
and the county is very large geographically. We also represent probably the biggest microcosms and diversity of any county. Some people say Clackamas County is a direct microcosm of the state of Oregon. In general, for instance, we have some of the most expensive real estate in the entire state of Oregon, and we have some of the most disadvantaged places in Clackamas County. Um, we have a real breakdown in political beliefs from one side to the other and down the middle. We have a large farming and natural resource community, a big recreation community. We also have manufacturing, medical, and office building and financial sectors that are in Clackamas County. So a real cross section, a microcosm. And a really wise person told me once, if you've seen one county, you've seen exactly one county because governance models can be different.
Mm.
Clackamas County is the oldest county in the state of Oregon, established in 1843 when the state of Oregon became a provisional government. In fact, Clackamas County was so large, we encompassed most of the northern part of the state of Oregon into what is now even Multnomah County. And so as time grew, populations changed, boundaries were drawn. So that's where we're at today. As far as the election is concerned, there's a lot of situations, a lot of problems in Clackamas County that people demand action on. And as chair, uh, with a five commission board, we have tried to tackle these in the best, most prudent, economically way possible. In Clackamas County, all commissioners vote on the issues. The chair does not dictate how it runs.
Mm-hmm.
So we have five-member board. We need three votes to pass any type of policy or spending action. And that's really the big difference between Multnomah County. We are not dictatorship at all.
Yeah.
In fact, in our business meetings right after COVID and during the end of COVID, we opened up our business meetings to in-person testimony. We were the first government around to really do that. And we still offer that every Thursday at 10 a.m. Somebody can come in and talk to commissioners.
That's great. Yeah. I'm curious, like, because yeah, that's a great breakdown of how it works and everything. What, like, what do you think about just having said all that about the Jessica Vega Peterson,
Mm,
like, kind of the ability to veto? I know that's probably not the right word, but
uh-huh.
she can kind of shut down
That's right.
stuff that she doesn't like. And
Well, that's the governance model of Multnomah County. Their particular chair is elected chair who serves on the policy, but she's also the quote administrator
mm,
of budgets. And so her job is really, really big. Um, that's what the voters of Multnomah County voted for. If they don't like the governance model, then they need to change it.
yeah, that's right. um, yeah, so kind of going along with that, tell me about because you have this big campaign of Portland Creep versus the Clackamas model, and
Hmm.
I personally have kind of touted a lot of the good things out of Clackamas, and I
Hmm.
just am like, I'm constantly looking over there, being like, the grass is greener, like, because I'm kind of right on the border. But tell me about like how you've had such success over there, and how you've staved off the Portland Creep, as you call it.
Well, it's not easy, and no action is final, and things can change in a moment. Most important is Clackamas County shares a 10-mile northern border with the city of Portland and Multnomah County. So at any time, if there's a change in Multnomah or city of Portland, it can affect Clackamas County. We have chosen our modeling and our programs, and we call it the Clackamas Way.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, let's talk about homeless for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
We were able to reduce homeless by a huge amount over the last 4 years. And we did a study. The study said we were able to reduce homelessness by 65%. How we did that is we looked at causation. Why are you homeless? Housing people in big buildings and apartments and shelters without treatment of their homelessness is not going to work. I never liked that model. I didn't think it was going to work. So what we do, we have about 20 to 25 people that go out and meet people on a daily basis on the street
Mm-hmm.
under their blue tarps. And these people, I think, are really brave. They kind of say, "Hey, how you doing?" And they engage in conversation and start to establish a relationship. Then they ask them, "Hey, you hungry? How about a hot meal?"
Mm-hmm.
We bring them in and start addressing their basic needs without making judgments. Let's get you a hot meal. Let's get you a shower. How about a clean clothes? And then they get back into, I remember how this feels. And then, they can go back out or wherever. And so it may take one contact, it may take 20 contacts per person.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can establish a conversation, if you can establish a relationship to figure out why they're homelessness, most people, and there's been studies on this, don't want to be addicted. They don't want to have mental illness. They don't want to be economically um, disparaged. And those are all the reasons why we have homelessness. So we bring them in, we have support systems, we have money to do this, and it's on an individual basis. We start with shelter housing, we get them into transitional housing.
Mm-hmm.
If they need treatment, do they need mental health recovery system, and get them into a place where they're comfortable, they can recover, and then eventually it's a job situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe then they transition to what we call supported housing. Let's say their job does not pay enough to pay the full amount of rent. We have rent assistance
Mm-hmm.
that helps them, that bridges their abilities to get back mainstreamed in society. And we've been fairly successful. There's a recidivism rate, sure, with any addiction there is.
Mm-hmm.
But then we bring them back in and do that again. And that's what we're doing in Clackamas County. I think it's a good model.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic. I mean, do you see that as ideologically opposite of what Monoma County is doing with like housing first? Would you
Mhm.
call it housing
Mhm.
first or something?
Well, yeah, Multnomah County and the governor are very keen on housing first. Multnomah County, to their credit, has tried to establish centers, and for some reason they're failing, and I don't know why. I don't dive too deeply in what they're doing.
Hmm.
I just try to keep Clackamas County in a good place, what we're doing.
Yeah, well, it seems to be working. So, um, no, it's funny because last week I had Keith Wilson, who's a mayoral candidate, and he
Oh,
basically pitched the same thing that you're saying is like it's so important to establish a relationship first, and then you do this shelter model first before this whole house, long-term housing
hmm.
plan. And that seems to be kind of the trend that I see now, and maybe they're stealing Clackamas's idea. I
Well, I don't
don't
know that
know.
it's our idea. So what Clackamas did is we convened a summit, uh, a Measure 110 slash homelessness summit last year, and brought in experts from across North America.
Mhm,
And these are doctors, and these are people who have established over 400 centers to deal with homeless, and they really know what they're talking about. And so we're going to try to copy one of those models. In fact, we created a recovery oriented system of care model, and we passed a resolution to do that. Now, with that in Clackamas County, we bought a building of 44,000 square feet. That it's an outpatient mental health facility.
okay.
Okay. Also, when a person gets arrested and they're acting out, maybe that person doesn't belong in jail. Let's take them over here to um, a center, and we call it a stabilization center, 23-hour stabilization center. Well, why did you do so? If they're in crisis,
Mhm,
is it a mental health crisis? They don't belong in jail. If they're addicted and they're coming off, they really don't belong in jail. They belong in treatment. So we've established that model to give them an opportunity to find out, why did you create the crime in the first place?
mhm,
I'm not saying these people are going to get scot-free off the crime. You still have to pay, but at least we can figure out why you did it.
mhm,
And then on a long-term basis, we have some land in Clackamas County that we're looking at building a very long-term, at least a 1-year recovery center for addictions, all addictions.
hmm,
And that's what it's going to take to get some people off, is a long-term. So we have short-term, we have middle-term, and long term. And it takes a year or two to get some of this established.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
I'll say this about the homeless situation. It ballooned after COVID.
mhm,
From the economics, from people being locked down. I think addiction rose when people were locked down,
mhm, mhm.
and no government on the West Coast was prepared to deal with the homeless situation. And all governments, including Clackamas County, were caught flat-footed. And we did not get into this situation overnight. We're not going to get out of it overnight. But if we are going to put money and resources behind it, we have to do what works.
Mhm. Yeah, and like I said, it seems like it's working. I think you're totally right about that too. It drives me crazy up here because and I'm not saying this from your perspective, but like I believe our joint office of homeless services in Multnomah County, they weren't even like going into the office for like 2 years,
I
and
know.
there was a lot of complaints about like how do we help these homeless people if these guys aren't even doing outreach or going in the office and all that stuff? And
Well, you talk about that. Let's take a look at the government's model in Multnomah County and Portland, for instance. I like to call it the three-headed monster.
okay,
Yeah, City of Portland, you have the mayor
hmm
and city council. And then you have Multnomah County Commission, a five-member board who are doing their thing. And then you have Metro with
hmm
their elected chair and president, and they're you know, pass this support housing services tax. So they're all dictating to each other how we do it. And the
yeah,
government's model in Multnomah and Portland is failing badly.
yeah, it definitely has not been working.
It's not been working. I mean, we see it every day. They can't buy a good headline in Portland
Yeah,
on this issue.
true. Yeah.
So I think somebody on the outside looking in, they need to go in and start adopting tried and true measures. There has been so much money spent. We're talking
hmm
hundreds of millions of dollars spent
hmm
on homelessness, and it's not getting any better in that area.
Yeah, and then I complain about it almost every single episode on this show, but Multnomah County is also sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars, and they don't spend it. There's like no urgency. There's nothing. But I don't know. I've talked about it a million times. I was curious though. I was thinking that you just mentioned Metro. Like, how does Clackamas interact with Metro, or is it like something you have to deal with, or you just kind of
Oh, no, we don't normally deal with them all the time, and most of the time we don't like it.
yeah.
Okay. So on the very last vote, and one of the very last votes was the supported housing services tax, supposedly taxing high income earners.
hmm
And that would be a single person making 125,000, a couple of 250. Well, anymore, that isn't that
It's
high
not a
income.
yeah. It's not.
It's a middle income for a lot of people, and people who don't make that are saying, well, Tootie, you don't understand. Well, it's really affecting when you tax that particular group of people.
hmm
It does affect the lower income brackets, even though you don't think it does.
Yeah.
And so what happened with that is Clackamas County voted no. Washington County passed by only 2 percentage points, and Multnomah County carried the day because it's a region-wide vote of the three counties. Not all of Clackamas County is in the metro boundary line.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. And we don't want to be.
Yeah.
Okay. And so there are things happening. For instance, Metro has come in and tried to take over our land use situation by establishing urban reserves and rural reserves. Recently, last year, Metro stole 500 acres of urban reserves from Clackamas County and gave it to Washington County.
Wow. They
And I
just
says,
kind of just
fine.
shifted it over.
They shifted it over. It shifted over our ability to developing lands with inside an urban reserve designation. That Metro told Clackamas County, we're going to be in this designation. We don't want to be in there. And so I went to Metro. I said, look, fine, give us back 500 acres. Actually, I wanted 1,000. I says, give me back what you took from us.
Yeah.
And they says, well, you're really not on the schedule. And, it was some deal with some developer. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Yeah.
You really don't have anything ready. You don't have anything land ready. I says, we have more land than those two counties put together. She said, well, how do I get ready? She says, well, you'll get ready when we say you're ready. And I said, okay, how do I get ready? How do they get ready? Well, we did this study and we determined this. I says, I want to study.
Right.
I want to study. You're
Yeah.
studying on the CE tax, a construction excise tax that builders pay, and that's millions of dollars. Let's do a study for Clackamas County. Well, you can't do that until you get the third party agreement, until you get three cities over here to agree, and the cities don't want to do this. And I says, I'm talking rural Clackamas County. I'm not talking city government.
hmm
Okay, I'm talking areas outside of the cities. And says, well, we don't want to do this. First they say yes, and then they say no. And then they put the parameters on the study, the questions that Metro wants to ask.
hmm
And I says, we're done. I says, fine, we'll hire our own land use person. We're going to do our own study, and then we're going to go to the state of Oregon, or we're going to go to the citizens. So first of all, you have these huge tax structures that's taxing Clackamas County citizens.
These are metro taxes. Yeah.
These are metro
Yeah.
taxes that are being collected on Clackamas County citizens.
Mm-hmm.
The zoo is one,
Mm-hmm.
the parks is another. Let me talk about parks for a minute. Everybody is so emotional about parks, and I wish they would wake up. Metro takes these parks dollars,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it was renewed last year. Say we're going to make parks. Well, as a matter of fact, I don't see a single park in
Yeah.
Clackamas County. You know what they do? They buy up private land, take it off the tax rolls, put a chain link fence and a padlock on it, and nobody gets to do it.
It just sits there
It
and
just sits there, and
yeah.
they're acquiring a land. They're acquiring land. So not only are they acquiring land through the parks bond, parks measure, they're acquiring land through zoning and designations that they impose.
Yeah.
And what my board of commissioners say, we are need to stand up, and we will stand up for the sovereignty of each county. If it was up to Metro, my opinion is they come in and take over Clackamas County, and they taken over Multnomah County, and then they'll take over Washington County. And I will say the tri-chairs, all tri-chairs, myself, Harrington, and Peterson, we talk about twice a month
Okay.
on a call. I say,
Yeah.
you know what? That's enough.
Yeah.
That's pretty much enough.
It's just so interesting because I've tried to talk about it on the show a few times because I think a lot of people don't even first of all know about Metro. But is it odd to have that nationally or even like in
Oh,
other
there's no
states to
government
have this
like it.
other government
Yeah,
body above three counties?
there is no established governance model like this in the entire state of Oregon. And the legislature passed it. Actually, it was put out a referral to all the counties, establishing all counties in Oregon voted on establish a metro regional government in 3 counties. And the other counties went along with it, says, yeah, because they were exempt. See how that
That's so
works?
weird. Yeah.
See how that works?
And this when was that?
Oh,
This
decades ago,
okay.
decades ago. And then Metro decided they need to take over garbage. So Metro was established as a garbage collection system, and they can't do that right.
Yeah.
I'm serious, they can't do that right.
Yeah.
And then they keep going to the legislature for expanded powers. The legislature has granted them expanded powers, but enough is enough.
Yeah.
We are so
Yeah,
done
what's
with that.
it's just funny because I bring it up because I think, like I said, people don't know what it is, and it's also like I don't think people could point to one thing they know that Metro does.
So
Maybe the zoo, I guess, like you're
yeah,
saying, but I
okay,
don't
well,
know.
that's a good question, the zoo. First of all, you have the garbage collection, then you have your land designation, then you have the housing bond, and then you have the parks bond, and then you have the homeless bond that we're putting millions and millions of dollars into homeless,
Hmm.
and then you have the zoo bond. Have you read the literature on the new zoo bond? They're trying to make it so we have a climate-friendly atmosphere for elephants and monkeys
Okay.
to live in.
Okay.
Yeah, and people are going to buy it.
Yeah.
So people should not complain if you're going to vote for this.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in Clackamas County, we don't raise taxes unless it goes to the vote of the people. In fact, the last referral that went out, the fire department, they're an independent agency. Our fire department went out and asked citizens for new money to come in. And I think that was a result of all the catastrophic fires that we
Mm-hmm.
had in Clackamas County, and we had an ice storm. So people felt compelled to protect their public safety, and rightfully so. So the Board of County Commissioners doesn't put out new taxes for programs to do whatever we need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really interesting. I was reading, I think they're trying to do a new homeless tax. Metro is, and I was reading the other day that it sounds like the new incoming Multnomah County Commission. They asked a bunch of the candidates if they would vote for it, and most of them said no
Mhm. Well, let
because
me tell you what that
they've
is.
just seen this track record of you know it's
So the
not a
Supported Housing Services Tax,
mhm.
SHS, they put out to the voters a 10-year taxation that we will solve the homeless situation. 10 years. We are now in year 3.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, the first year you don't
Where's all that
collect
money
taxes.
going? Yeah,
Well, let me explain. The first year you don't collect taxes because it takes a year after a tax is voted on
to
to
kind of
bring in. Oh, so you don't get money the first year on anything, fire, police, anything. Okay.
right.
So we went to year 2, we did it. We're in year 3. In year 3, Metro wants to go out and make this tax permanent.
Hmm.
And I said, we don't have the right to ask taxpayers that because we still have homeless on the street.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Well, a permanent
A permanent,
tax. Yeah.
and then another increase. And what's Multnomah County going to do? They're out of places. What's Metro going to do with that? Are they trying to create their own housing authority when they
Mm,
can't even manage a zoo?
right, exactly. Yeah, I don't. That's what I just get the feeling. I don't know what they do with all that money, but I was gonna ask about the mileage tax because it's like it's. I know it's a huge deal to Clackamas County. Um, like Ben West talks about it a lot, and even for me, like I commute up 205 every weekday.
Hmm.
But just talk about that for a minute and how, because I know it's just a huge deal to
Hmm.
your constituents and
Well,
everything.
so let's go back. How does this conversation get to where we're at today? ODOT claims they need more money for roads. ODOT is fiscally mismanaged. They need to have a total audit. They need to go in and they need to eliminate wasteful spending like we did in Clackamas County.
Hmm.
Okay, and there's a model for that. I'll get into that later if you want. So they wanted to toll Clackamas County. They wanted to I-205 was the only jurisdiction in Oregon that they wanted to toll, and it
Hmm.
was disproportionate. It would have shut our county down economically. We opposed tolling. We got all 16 cities to join us in opposing tolling to the legislature. Citizens didn't want it. ODOT put out a 2,000-page EA report and said, this is how we're going to do it. Well, guess who read it? Clackamas County read it. Staff, we have great staff, answered that report with the help of a nationally acclaimed attorney firm and said, on 30 pages, this is why your report is wrong and it's illegal and it's
Mm,
inaccurate. We took that to the Oregon legislature last session and they said, well, thank you. This is what we've been waiting for. Tina Kotek then put a pause on tolling.
that's right. I do remember that now. Yeah.
That was the first time.
Okay.
And then they decided, well, we're going to do something different. And they kind of amped it up. And then she realized, this isn't going to work, even though she spearheaded it when she was Speaker of the House.
Hmm.
She's the one that did it through House Bill
Yeah, I
2017
remember for a long time it had this momentum going through the legislature, and it seemed like it would go through, but
because it
you
was
guys kind of
undefined.
put a stop to that.
It was undefined.
Yeah.
Okay. And then she put a stop on it for the second time. But now rumblings are coming out that she may do this or that. The reason why I opposed it in Clackamas County because they told all lanes at the same time.
Mm,
We had no diversion routes. We're the only jurisdiction told.
right. Right.
And you just don't do that. I mean, it was a bad plan. So I'm talking to the governor, and she says, to the 2025 session, it's going to be all about transportation. We need to find more money. I says, really, you need to find more money? She says, well, people are tired of the vehicle registration fee. That's probably not going to work. We
Mm.
probably can't raise gas taxes anymore. But vehicles miles traveled in your car. So what they want to do, they want to put a computer device in your
I
car
heard about this, the mileage
and
tax.
they
Yeah.
track where you go on roads you've already paid for.
Yeah. Which just, to me, it just sounds ridiculous. Like, I don't know. I commute every day. That would just upset me and drive me crazy. Like, I don't know. And I also think people don't think about low income people who need to drive. Like,
That's
it's
right.
such a common
Hmm.
mode of
That's why,
transport for low income people.
and that's why we were so opposed to tolling because there was no economic diversity. Are you going to toll your ambulance and your fire truck?
Hmm.
Are you going to toll your food delivery trucks?
Yeah.
And then with the rate of inflation, things have skyrocketed. Gas is high,
Hmm.
and then it's not only the tolls that you pay in your car that you're affected by. You're going to see yet another increase at your grocery store. You're going to see another increase in your ambulance bill
Hmm.
if you ever have to call that. You're going to see another layer of increases because of tolling. I mean,
Yeah.
it's inevitable.
But this current state of it, it's on pause, but you think it's going to come back, or she
They're
thinks.
going to try to do something. They want to build a Columbia River crossing bridge across the Columbia River.
Okay.
I heard talk about Highway 217 and 26 out in Washington County. I don't know what Washington County is going to do with this.
Hmm.
There's all kinds of Rose Quarter. Um,
And all that would go to ODOT. Is that for the majority
it
of it,
would
I guess?
go
Yeah.
directly to ODOT,
Yeah.
and um, and the problem with that is the Oregon legislature needs to step up and have more oversight and how ODOT is how they're spending their money because they're just an entity unto themselves. As far as I'm concerned, ODOT is like the Titanic.
Yeah.
It really is. You're not going to save that department the way
Mm-hmm.
it's going now.
Mm-hmm.
It really needs to be restructured.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I hope they don't. Because I was thinking too, wasn't the toll you mentioned it was it kind of unfairly targeted just Clackamas County.
Hmm.
Wasn't it? It was kind of around Oregon City or
Hmm.
south of there that they were.
Well, it's the Abernathy Bridge
Okay.
from Oregon City to Westland. It crosses the Willamette River.
That's where they were
And
doing it.
down south toward the Wilsonville and
Gotcha.
Lake Oswego, Westland, Oregon City, and Gladstone. It would be very detrimental to those communities.
Yeah. Yeah, because it really is like a commuter kind of area.
Hmm.
And yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. Um, I wanted to go back to, or actually, while we're talking about transportation stuff, I wanted to get your reaction on this Port of Portland thing. I was telling you a little bit before we recorded about they, as far as my understanding, they have, because of revenue, they were making no money, is what they say, exporting and importing all container shipments at the Port of Portland. And I'm just curious your reaction about that. And
Are you talking specifically shutting down Terminal 6
I don't know
or
the
all of
terminal. I
it?
believe it's all the entire Port of Portland, all container
So why
shipments.
is it other ports in America can operate yet Port of Portland can't?
That's a good.
That's my big question.
That's a good
They're
point. Yeah.
losing money. Well, then they're not managing right, just like ODOT, just like everything else in this state's a train wreck. And I'm personally getting fed up with that. Now, this is how it affects Clackamas County.
Hmm.
Clackamas County is an export county. We produce agricultural products, food to eat.
Yeah.
We export those out of our county. We have timber products. We're a manufacturing sector that we export out. And a lot of these food products I'm talking about, like blueberries and cherries and pears and hazelnuts, export to Asia.
Yeah.
That's our biggest buying market. And the same thing with our lumber. We export our lumber for home building across America and to Asia as well. And so you're going to kill Clackamas County. You're going to kill our economies. They need to figure it out and quit whining and crying that they're not making money. They need to go in and restructure, maybe hire some auditors and some accountants instead of policy people. All government needs some top level accountants
Yeah.
looking
Exactly.
at the books and seeing how you're doing. You know what we did at Clackamas County? We have an opportunity to build a brand new courthouse.
Okay.
And the Justice Department, the state Justice Department realized counties weren't building courthouses because they were too expensive. And it's the constitutional duty of every county to have a courthouse. I don't know if people realize that. So they decided to go with a 50% match,
Okay.
and the counties meet the match. Clackamas County's courthouse is over 100 years old. It was built in the 1930s for a population of 50,000. Now we have a population of 430,000. Not only have we outgrown it, the Willamette River swims underneath it, and it's starting to crumble, and we have
Wow.
cracks in the foundation. It's in a bad
Wow.
place.
Yeah.
So I came on as chair and I says, look, there's no way I'm going to build a courthouse because we have done polling. And in order to raise taxes on people, we have to refer them to the vote. People aren't going to vote for a tax increase for a courthouse, nor should they,
Hmm.
because I think we can right side our budget. So what we did, we went to every single department and we took away how they spend money, how they receive money. First of all, you eliminate your vacant positions. A vacant position is a position that is created with a title and money goes into it. And money keeps going into it when there's no person there doing the job.
Hmm. The money's still there, but there's nobody
There's
there.
and
Yeah.
it's just it's just a slush fund.
Hmm.
It's a slush fund for the departments. So what we said, we eliminate that. If you truly need to hire somebody, then you go to our county administrator and make the case. Okay. Secondly, we established a chart of accounts. A chart of accounts shows where every single dime, it's an accounting term.
Hmm. Hmm.
People need to start thinking about accounting. Okay, this is my mortgage payment. This is my desk. This is my computer. And there's a line item for every item you spend. It's called a chart of accounts. And what they didn't like is they had to have monthly reconciliations of their checkbook. Every month they had to say how much money they had and where it went. Oh, they don't like that at all. If there's a big surplus of money, it goes back to the general fund. They don't get a sit on it, and that includes money from the vacant positions. And probably the biggest situation was if any government receives state and federal grants, you have to adhere to what you call a allocated cost model.
Okay.
Ours was outdated by a couple decades, and the federal government was saying, you're going to be in danger of not receiving grants unless you upgrade your allocated cost model. And what that is, if you get a grant from the federal government, let's say it's $10,000. Okay. How much of that $10,000 does it cost for you, for instance, uh, to administer the grant?
Mm.
What does your desk cost? What does your computer cost? Your electricity cost? Is there a mortgage payment? Is there a cost to the building? So every action that a government takes has a cost to it. What we found out in our study is some departments weren't paying allocated costs at all,
Mm.
and it was shifted over to the general fund.
Wow.
Whereas they're getting federal monies to pay their allocated costs, but they were not assigning allocated costs to the federal and state money.
Mm.
So what we did is we evened it out throughout the county and we saved a ton of money.
Yeah.
So all these measures I'm talking about, we're able to make a $15 million a yearly payment starting in May of 25, which is our half of the courthouse. That's how we do it without raising taxes.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah. I mean, you're just making me want to move to Clackamas County, but no, I wish, yeah, I wish Multnomah would have an audit or something like that that would just, save a ton of money. But I'm glad you pointed that out too, because I think I'm trying to help people draw connections with the Port of Portland, and people might just say, "Oh, why don't they just truck that stuff out?" But if it's literally going overseas, it has to get on a ship at some point and go somewhere, and it's just
Well,
gonna.
our
And I was reading, I guess uh, we're now the only major city on the West Coast who doesn't have a container shipping port. Obviously Seattle and all those places still have one, but after this, we're the only major city that will not have one.
well, it's another example of broken government not working for the
I
people.
just and
Get it figured out.
Yeah, I don't understand it because I'll have to reread it. But as far as I was saying, the Port of Portland press release said our volumes are going up, but we've been losing money, and I'm just like, how does that make any sense? I don't understand that, but
Well,
uh,
they really need to do some, I think, basic accounting.
yeah.
Bring in accounting firm and an audit firm
Hmm.
and have them look at your books. What are you afraid of? Why are you afraid of finding out the truth?
Yeah, or just I don't know. Yeah, they just seem so bad at making money from it. It's like if your volumes are going up, you should be making more money.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
I don't.
Absolutely. And
Uh,
this state has grown over the last decade, as we
hmm.
know.
Hmm.
People like to live here, but the huge taxation in Multnomah County really allowed a lot of people to move to
To move.
Clackamas County.
Yeah, or other counties too. Yeah. And yeah, that's actually kind of a good segue too. You mentioned earlier you broke down beautifully this kind of dichotomy of like you have some of the wealthiest real estate. I'm guessing you're talking about like Happy Valley and Lake Oswego
Lake
or what is
Oswego.
yeah. Um, but then you have this rural, tons of countryside farms, all
Hmm.
that stuff.
Hmm.
I'm just curious how that equilibrium like kind of exists and how well that works. And it seems like it's working well. I mean,
It exists.
yeah.
It just doesn't. It's the way we are in Clackamas County. That's how we roll.
Hmm.
And we need to take care of everybody. We can't have communities feeling like the stepchild while other counties get the attention. And so the county government, we don't manage cities. We work with cities. If they need help, they reach out. If we're able to help, we'll do it. A lot of this supported housing services money we send to the cities and said, cities, look, most of the homeless populations are within your city, so you better step up and deal with it. Don't blame Clackamas County
Mm,
for a problem you don't want to solve. And I'm going to tell you, it took a year for some of these cities to come around.
mm,
Yeah, and they don't want to admit it. They don't want to have camping. They'd rather have. They don't want to establish a shelter because the thinking is if I establish a shelter, more people will come. Well, had you ever considered if you establish a shelter and address the causation of homelessness
mhm,
that is on the road to solving homelessness? And so those are conversations that we've been having. Most of the farm situations, the timber situations, where we have this federal government overlay on our timber, and now the governor wants to make it worse
mm,
by taking away our ability on private and state lands to log. She's trying to adopt the horrific model of the federal government on our timber, and it's heading us for disaster. Why do you think we had that catastrophic wildfire in September of 2020? Because of dead and dying timber
mhm.
that we are not allowed to go in and clean our forests.
Yeah, the more I learn about that stuff, it is really shocking about how when Ed Deal was here, he was saying the state literally just let some of these to burn and
They
just,
did. And you know what's really scary is all those millions of acres and millions of board feet that are burned are still dead, lying on the
right.
forest ground. Another fire comes through. Talk about fuel.
Mm,
That's like gasoline on a match.
just goes right up again.
That's
Yeah.
right. It goes right up again.
Wow. Yeah. Um, um, Feel free to say as much as you want about I was going to ask about Governor Kotek's situation with this like nepotism, whatever you
Hmm.
want to call it.
Hmm.
Just like, what's your reaction to that? Is that okay? Like, do you see this ending? How do you see
Well,
it?
I was a bit surprised since when Governor Kotek, I think was Speaker of the House, voted against John Kitzhaber for his situation
Mhm.
with his girlfriend. But I don't know exactly what's going on with this. I was a little bit surprised. I was extremely shocked when her top staff people left and her attorney left.
Mhm.
So there's obviously something going on that the public is not made aware of. And I think she needs to answer. Why did your attorney leave?
Yeah.
Why did three of your top um, staff people leave? And these just aren't governor staff people.
Right.
You
These
know, they're
are
Democrat people who've been in the system that understand how to run state government. And
mhm,
she's never
mhm.
answered for that.
Yeah, these are like core members of her team that
Hmm.
are just,
Yeah,
yeah.
core members of any good governance team. So that needs to be answered to.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. Just kind of, I mean, maybe there's more there, but just come clean and just like explain to people what's going on. And,
You know, I
but,
read I read something, a little tiny little paragraph that spouses were considered public officials.
right.
I have never seen that in Oregon revised statutes.
Okay.
I've never seen that in any rulemaking. I used to be in the legislature,
Hmm.
and I asked some people, I says, are spouses considered public officials? No, I don't think so. Although spouses of the governor have worked on certain projects. You know, for instance, um, maybe a reading initiative. You know, this is what I stand for. Um, so I think we're treading into water that is going to start bubbling up, and there's going to be a give and take, and maybe there needs to be definitions.
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't know. I don't know, but it's something that a governance model in Oregon has never really successfully dealt with.
Yeah, you're right. I think, yeah, it is a extremely gray area that seems to come up again and again. And, but yeah, maybe more definition and clarity around that. I did want to ask about, say as much as you want about this. There's a viewer question I got about the, I'm trying to say this right, NCPRD
Hmm.
in the center, and just as much as you'd like to comment on. I know it's like an ongoing thing.
Well, for the folks listening, NCPRD is the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District.
Mhm.
It's a recreation district established to provide parks services. Um, we have county parks, and it's this overlay of government. They collect taxes to secure parks. We have a swimming pool, we have baseball, we have basketball courts on the inside. And years ago, I'm trying to think how many years ago that was, maybe 6 or 8 years ago, there was this deal made with the North Clackamas School District to trade three dilapidated schools for some ball fields and maybe something else. And I'm not really sure what the deal was because I
Mhm.
wasn't on the board then.
Yeah, this is just North Clackamas, is that right? Yeah.
North Clackamas School District. And within that school district, we acquired some old schools that the school district didn't want to use anymore because they were such bad
Yeah,
condition,
they're very old and yeah,
very old.
yeah.
I mean, we're talking almost 100 years old.
Mhm.
One of them was rented to a private school, and they have moved out because we said, you know, we really don't think the conditions so conducive for school kids, and we might want to take this piece of ground and make it a recovery center.
Mhm.
And they were totally fine. They left. Well, in this other building called Wichita School, on a very temporary basis, the school district knew it was a very temporary basis, that we would allow certain social services to come in and provide services to the community. And it's been fairly successful. Thank you very much. And so it's, you know, clothing, food stamps, health referral systems, that type of
Mhm.
situation,
Mhm.
of which is very important. But the school district knew that it was
Yeah, this is
temporary,
always a
it
short-term
was always short
thing.
term. So we're looking at the real estate holdings in the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. Okay. And that is the mission of that. It is not the mission necessarily of the Parks District to provide social services
Right. That
to
does seem a
everything.
little strange, yeah.
Although we do have centers, like there's a Milwaukee Center,
Mhm.
which is fine, it's self sustaining. And so we would never end the social services in there. We would find a new place for them. So we're trying to sustain our bottom line on the Parks District because within 5 years it's going to be broke.
Mhm.
And then the people will be screaming at us, oh, you closed the doors on the parks. Well, so we're trying to combine the assets. We did an audit. We're trying to find out what works and isn't. And we said, look, we'd like to negotiate a price to buy it. and we kind of ended, we gave notice, we put, a pause on the ongoing leases. Leases came up for renewal. We didn't want to do that. But most of the negotiations with the commissioners are in executive session,
Mm-hmm.
and that is protected legally under law, that we're able to negotiate with the North Clackamas School District on possible buying or continued whatever they want to do there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where we're at now. And we can't come out and say publicly what those negotiations are, because it would ruin the
Right,
negotiations.
right.
Because people who don't understand what's going on out there, and they have opined, and they have really been critical of this situation, they don't know what's going on,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because we can't. And Clackamas School District is under the same executive session privilege as the Board of County Commissioners, and that needs to be honored. We cannot have leaks going out the door. We cannot having the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners, who sits as the park directors on this, being accused of something that isn't true. And I think that's what was going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like it's all just, you're trying to get a better long-term solution
We're trying to
anyway.
find a
Yeah.
better long-term solution,
Yeah.
not only for the Parks District, but
Right.
the social
Right.
services are in there.
Yeah. Excellent. So tell me, I'll have a bunch of goofy questions here for you, but I want to know your Northwest story. Obviously, you've been around the Northwest for a long time.
Mhm.
But just give people kind of like your kind of past and history. And I know like you said, you were in the legislature and all that stuff, and you you had like
Well,
a
I'm a fourth generation Clackamas County resident and farmer.
yeah.
I come from farming roots. My husband and I own a hazelnut farm now.
Oh wow. Okay.
It was in the family farm. My folks bought it in 1959, and my folks are farmers on another piece of land, and on down the line. So we've decided to do that. I say I'm the most blessed person in Clackamas County, because I was born in Oregon City,
Okay.
and I get to go to work in Oregon City at the county offices, which is the county seat.
Nice.
And my roots really are in Clackamas County. And I try to understand daily, what people are doing and thinking. I first got involved in politics in the late 1980s, when the federal government wanted to list the spotted owl as an endangered species and shut
Mm,
down our ability on our federal forests to log sustainably. And when that happened, people don't realize, in the early 90s under President Clinton, it took away tax receipts
mm,
to the local schools, the local city governments. It took away their ability to build sidewalks and
mm.
sewer systems.
There's a lot of local livability stuff. Yeah.
So all federal tax receipts, it was divvied up in different pots of money. It went to your local governments, like I say, our school districts. In fact, Malala School District, for most of the time I lived there, did not have a tax base.
Mm.
It was timber receipts that paid for that.
Wow.
And now we come to a point where the timber isn't even managed. It's dying on the ground, and nobody is getting anything. For what?
Mm-hmm.
For what? And that's a crying shame. So I came up through the natural resource industry. I was the executive director of the Oregon Lands Coalition. I was a newspaper editor, and I've always been really involved in politics from an outside looking in, very interested in it. It came an opportunity through term limits. I was able to run for the House of Representatives in 2000. I was elected, and I served for 4 years, 2 terms. Some of the most difficult situations, because we had the longest session on record, where we started in
Really?
January, went to August, and we broke a record.
Wow.
Nobody wants to do that again,
Yeah, I guess it doesn't seem like it.
because it was the
Yeah.
declining revenues that we're
Right.
getting and we decided not to implement state taxes to balance our budget. It was Republican controlled.
Mm,
So what we did is we looked at services, kind of like we did at Clackamas County. We looked at the services. Is there anything redundant? Is there any programs that the state really doesn't need to be involved in?
mm,
And so we just kind of set those aside and said, look, if we get rich enough, we'll bring them back. So that's what we did to balance our budget, and it took a while to do that. When I was in the legislature, because I was a business owner, they assigned me to Ways and Means. It was kind of a reward. Everybody wants to be on Ways and Means, because that's where all the money is.
okay. Yeah.
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 And I was assigned to education and human services, the two largest pots of money at the time. And I tell you, some days I didn't like it at all, because I arrived at 8:30 and I worked through 4:30 or 5 every single day. And it's Ways and Means are really the only committees where you work every day. The other committees meet for a couple hours and then you're gone. But what I did is I learned about government budgets,
Mm-hmm.
and it was hard. And a lot of times I didn't like it. I learned what government budgets worked, and I learned what didn't work. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm able to take that knowledge of budgets and bring them at the county level and say, hey, let's try this. If it doesn't work, we'll go back to the other way. But what we're doing is We have a great finance team at Clackamas County. We have some budget managers that are awesome with GAO qualified accountants with a lot of credentials and say, hey, this is a proper budgeting method that needs to be followed. And I would challenge and I would submit through a challenge that all county governments need to do that if they're not doing it
Hmm.
that way right now.
Is it not? It's not that
I would
common.
submit, it's not common, I would submit to Governor Kotek. She needs to do that with every single state agency. We have state agencies right now that are failing. Our forestry department is failing. Oh, we don't have enough money. Our Department of Wildlife is failing. We don't have salmon because they shut down all the hatcheries.
Hmm.
You can't salmon fish. You can't enjoy the recreation that Oregon has a reputation of garnering.
Yeah, it's funny. You just reminded me. I was reading this week that the guy, I don't know his name. I'm sorry, but there's a guy at the state who oversaw the kicker tax and how that, and he just left. Kotek's staff is my understanding, but it doesn't seem very good for fiscal reasons, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I totally agree with you. Like, and I'm glad you're in government because I think we need more fiscally responsible people who have an understanding of business and how inflows and outflows work with money. And yeah, um, and yeah, and so you've been since then you've been on the Clackamas County Commission for
I
a number of
first was
years.
elected in 2012, left in 16, took 4 years off.
Hmm.
I had a private business, some real estate holdings in Molalla, and my husband decided he wanted to retire in 2019. I says, maybe it's time to sell. So we sold at a really good time.
Hmm.
I sold some businesses. We kind of liquidated. And I says, well, what do I want to do? And I had an inkling just to get back in the saddle again. So I decided to run for chair. And I was elected in the primary of 2020.
Yeah, that's awesome too. Yeah, congrats, and I hope you win again.
Thank you. Thank you.
um, yeah, is there anything else you want to mention about the Northwest before I get into these goofy questions?
Oh, I don't know.
I mean, you're a, you're like me. I was born in Oregon. I've been here my whole life, but what else can we
Northwest
say
is a
about the
great
Northwest?
place to live.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have a tainted reputation because of the city of Portland.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to come to Oregon anymore, and that's a crying shame.
Hmm.
Portland needs to get their act together, and they need to do it now and quit wasting time and quit wasting money.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. All right. Let me get into these. Let's say you're parking somewhere, like at a business, like a regular parking lot. Do you pull in or do you back in?
Do I back in?
Yeah. Do you pull in normally or do you back in? Like, what's your normal?
Okay, this is funny. At my county offices where I go to work, I back in.
Okay.
Okay. At If I go grocery shopping, I usually pull in
Okay.
unless I can pull through to the spot in front of me.
Oh, where it's like there's no stopper
Yeah,
thing.
where
Yeah.
there's no stopper or there's not a car there.
Okay.
So I'm half and half.
I like that answer. Yeah. It's kind of dependent on,
It
but
depends.
at work you're usually
Well,
backing
it
in.
is because it works there. And when I'm in a parking lot where there's a lot of public people coming in and out, I don't feel secure a lot of time backing up. Although I have a backup camera.
Yeah.
Sometimes if it's raining, my backup camera has mud or
Yeah. It's all
road film all over
dirty.
and I
Yeah.
can't see out of it.
I like that answer. That might be the most like sensible answer that I've
Oh,
heard. All right. This is interesting question for you because you say you have a hazelnut farm, right?
hmm.
It's not really a fruit, but which fruit do you think you could throw the farthest if you just picked up and threw a piece of fruit?
Let me think. A hard tomato
Hard tomato.
because it resembles a baseball.
I have not heard that answer. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Because isn't a baseball something you can hurl I
Yeah.
thought
Yeah.
about tennis because I used to play tennis, but tennis ball doesn't have the weight of a baseball.
Right. It's a little lighter. Yeah. I like that answer. Do you like crunchy or smooth peanut butter, or maybe you don't like peanut butter?
I love peanut butter and I love crunchy.
Okay, me too.
I
I'm
like to
team
crunch.
crunchy.
Nun.
And no oil, no oil. Do you like the stir or the no stir?
Yeah, I got stir up oil. So I make nut butter from my hazelnuts.
Oh wow.
So what? It's really easy. So you pick them and you dry them, and then I roast them in the oven
Hmm.
because it gives them a really nice flavor. And then I just spin them in my food processor. Easiest in the world. So the longer you spin them, the more oil that
It
automatically
just
comes out.
separates.
Oh yeah, you can probably make oil for cooking at how much oil is in there. So I
Wow.
don't process them all the way. So the oil is very good for your system.
And is that available to buy? Can I buy that somewhere?
Uh, I don't make it to sell.
Okay, I'm just curious. Um, all right. Do you have a favorite type of French fry? Do you like crinkle cut, regular cut, JoJo's or like anything. I don't
I
know.
like sweet potato French fries.
That's a good answer. Yeah. I was thinking nobody has answered sweet potato, I don't think yet.
Yeah,
And I know like I think Burgerville or somebody does sweet potato fries. I
yeah,
can't.
and they're a little bit more in the grocery store. I don't have them a lot,
Hmm.
but if well, frankly, I'm trying to watch my weight.
Yeah. And
I
French
don't
fries are
need
not.
more French fries
Yeah.
in my life, but if I do, it's sweet potato.
Okay. I like that answer. Um, and I know you just you're trying to watch what you eat, but if you are going to an ice cream place, do you
Hmm.
go cone, waffle cone, cup, any of those options?
Cup chocolate
Chocolate, that's perfect. I was gonna ask what flavor.
because I'm gluten free, so I need to stay away from the cones.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Um, do you keep your butter in the fridge or you keep it out?
Both.
Both. Okay.
So the majority of the butter is in this tray in the refrigerator. However, I have a little butter container with a lid on the counter that one stick at a time and it stays out.
I like these answers because you're ready for anything. It's like,
Oh, well, I don't know. That's just the way I do it.
well, yeah. No, it's just great. Most people pick one or the other, but you're like, I have this ready for cooking and this ready for
Yeah,
other. Yeah, it's great. Um, if you had to pick, if you were forced to pick a brand to run, you kind of do run a brand at Clackamas County, I guess.
a brand.
But if you had to pick like Nike or some big brand to run, would you have one that you'd want to run like a big?
Portland General Electric.
Oh, that's an interesting one.
You know
Yeah,
why?
yeah.
It's electricity, and every person has to have it to survive.
Right. Yeah.
And when and the reason why I come to this because we had the wildfires
Hmm.
that many people were without power for a month, and not necessarily PGE's fault. And then the ice storms was the same.
Yeah.
And so it is a commodity nowadays that's the most necessary commodity that we have because it goes to the health, welfare, and safety of our people.
Hmm.
That would be the commodity that I would produce would be electricity.
That's a really I like that answer. Yeah, because I feel like most people wouldn't want to run that, but
Oh, oh, I would love it. Well, I used to work at Bonneville Power Administration
oh,
years
did
and
you?
years ago, and I
Okay.
was a legal rights reviewer, and I learned how we make hydropower
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the Pacific Northwest. And still, with Bonneville Power, we have the most inexpensive power in the entire United States because of the dams on the Columbia River.
Hmm.
We have turbines in there that produce power that spreads all over the 5 western states.
Yeah. I did. I actually didn't. I did some video work for Bonneville Power years ago. I don't know. It was like 8 years ago or something. But I learned all that, and I don't think people know that up here that they generate all this power and they sell it to other
Oh,
states
yeah.
because we have
If
so
we have a
much.
surplus, we're able to sell it, which is totally fine because it's a business model and we need to keep the business model
Hmm.
profitable. People love their electricity. They love their electricity. And when it goes out, they get very grouchy because
Yeah.
they don't have heat.
Yeah. It
Uh,
only takes a couple
they don't
hours.
have their
Yeah.
cell phones charged. They're not able to watch television or use their computer.
Yeah.
And it's a direct correlation to electricity.
That's it. Yeah. I love that answer. Did you have a good meal recently, or a business you want to shout out in Clackamas? I just ask people that every episode of like, is there?
We just discovered because I don't go to Tualatin often, but there's a Bricks Tavern
Mm-hmm.
over off of Nyberg Road, and they have this lake in the back, and all these buildings surround this lake. It's a mixed use area. I think it's a man made lake to take in rainwater.
That's
And
cool. There's a lake back there.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's a little man made lake. I'm going, wow, this food is really good. Some of the best salads I've ever had are
Okay.
there.
Okay. Shout out to them. Yeah. Um. Yeah. Before we wrap it up, I always wanted to tell people like where can people donate to your thing, or do you just have a
Yes, we can.
website?
I'm
Website?
actively campaigning for reelection.
Yeah.
The election will probably be decided in the May. My website is tootysmith.com. There's a donation tab. There's also a biography there. There's also a lot of information on what we've done in Clackamas County, the positions I've taken and why. There's testimonials from people, and you can go in there and submit an email. There's an email link that you
Okay.
can send me an email, and I will answer. I may not answer for a day or two because I'm really busy right now, but most
But you'll
people,
respond eventually.
I
Yeah.
will respond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. Not.
tootysmith.com.
Yeah, there you go. If you like what she's saying, donate. And I say this to everyone, I'll give you a donation if I can. I donate to you? Is that
Oh, yeah.
anyone can do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give you a donation because anyone
Oh,
who comes on
well, you
here.
don't
So
have to, but thanks for having me on
yeah.
today.
Yeah, no, it's been fun. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap it up
Well,
here?
Clackamas County, I just love it. I love what we're doing. A lot of it's really hard. Things change all the time. A lot of times it's a moving ball, but I think your county government needs to be stable and you need to know what we're doing and transparency, and you can get that. We have on our website at clackamas.us every single public meeting we've ever had, and it goes back 10 to 12 years.
Wow.
And you can link on YouTube. to find out
That's
what we
great.
do,
Yeah.
what we say.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're very transparent. And you can also email Clackamas County to get more official information on this area or this area or this area.
Yeah.
What I want to say is county government is your most localized government. We're closest to the people. A lot of times people come to us and say, well, why don't you fix the public school situation? Because they don't like what's going on. Well, that's not our governance model. We really don't fix the public school situation. This is where you would go. We are the public health authority, however. Most
Mhm.
people don't know that. So that's posed a problem with state mandates that have come down. And so it's your county government is your public health authority. When Governor Brown went crazy with all these mandates,
Mhm.
and then she threatened counties, if you don't do this, I'll take away your state funding. That was a horrific situation to be in. And so I talked to our hospital groups in Clackamas County, and we knew that a lot of people were going in to be treated for COVID.
Mhm.
And they had, beds lined up in the hallway, and I would be online. I says, well, what can Clackamas County do to help? This is the Providence group. And they said, well, we're doing the best we can. I says, there's something that our private clinics can do because we have 3 private clinics in Clackamas County, and they're free. They're federally funded.
Wow.
And I said, well, we treated a patient, a COVID patient with monoclonal antibody treatment, and it was successful. And the head doctor pipes up. He says, you did what? And I repeated it. We successfully treated a COVID patient with this. And he says, I want you to tell me that again because he didn't believe me. And he says, well, don't believe me. Call our public health director. I gave him the name. And he says, my God, he says, we have been waiting for somebody to do that. And so the monoclonal antibody treatment has been around for years and years and years. It's very effective, but you have to be treated within the first 72 hours of
Mhm.
contracting COVID.
Mhm.
Okay. So they were able to do it. We were able to do it. And then what Providence Hospital did is they started using that treatment in their clinics. And to my amazement to this day, why does Providence Hospital System need permission from somebody to do a treatment that's been around for decades?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I just happened to stumble on it. One weekend I was home, a lot of rain, I didn't go outside, and I just started clicking and I started going through the internet on treatments for COVID and what can we do? Because I was at a loss.
Mhm.
I was totally at a loss. The vaccines weren't out. Vaccines, now that vaccines weren't that,
Yeah.
we,
And even after it came out, it's like, what,
yeah, they
yeah.
weren't, they were
There was a
rationed. They
def
were rationed.
yeah.
I was concerned they wouldn't work because they were developed too fast.
Mhm.
Um, and now we find out that they don't work.
Right.
And so I've always been a person that I believe you have your own choice over your health.
Mhm.
I don't
Mhm.
believe government should force vaccinate. I don't believe government should force you into anything, but we give choices to people. So in Clackamas County, vaccines were a choice. Despite Governor Brown poking us and saying, Chair Smith, you only have a 60% vax rate in your county. He says, well, Governor, we have 1.2 million acres and it's an accessibility issue. And there's a lot of people out in the rural counties aren't going to drive to downtown
Mhm.
Portland to get your vax
Mhm.
because it's not reasonable.
Yeah. When it really is important, I always tell people like, because people, especially this year, are so focused on the national election that I always tell people just start with the local because local stuff is just so important. And if you want to see change whichever direction, like just, vote locally and like start looking at those issues and stuff. And because it really is tremendously important. I think what Clackamas County is doing is pretty unique up here in
Hmm.
Oregon.
Hmm.
And yeah, like you were just saying, some of that kind of independence, I think, is why people move there and are, spending money there and all that stuff. And
People are smart to give them choices.
hmm
And I truly believe that. I don't want government to come in and run my life, and nor do you. Most people don't. But people do want certain services.
hmm
Okay. And that's what we try to do. It's a fine line sometimes. Sometimes it's, it's not so fine. And so we just react to um, to the services. So since I became on as chair, I defined um, core county services.
mm
And Clackamas is, like I say, an Oregon revised statute. We're a statutory county. And so what are the core county services that counties are responsible for? What are we offering over here that don't make sense and somebody else can do?
Mm-hmm.
So what we did is we streamlined that. And I went over the statutes since Oregon became a state in 1859, and it has evolved over time. And what I found out is Oregon has the oldest housing
Is that
authority.
right? Wow.
Yeah, it was established practically since statehood.
Wow.
Housing, and I don't know why, but we are. That's what we are. So we have the oldest housing authority in the entire state of Oregon, maybe on the West Coast.
Wow. Yeah.
And the constitutional duties were established with a judge and a sheriff and a county commissioner.
Mm.
And the reason why all those was because of property rights, law and order,
Mm-hmm.
and administration, because we did take taxes in. So way back then, you only had 3 county government officials, and now you have a whole bunch,
Right.
which that's what it's evolved into. So if you can think about core county services and what those are mean, and it took a while for that to permeate in, and now the other commissioners are talking about that, and it really is relief for that because we cannot afford to fund every good idea that walks in the door, and we have to say no a lot. It doesn't mean the idea is a bad idea.
Yeah. Right.
Can we find another place for you to get the money, not at the county level?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. To me, it just sounds like smart government, but but yeah, Tootie, thanks so much for coming today, and this was awesome talking to you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me, and it's been a great talk.
Yeah.